From the Lean Enterprise Institute in Boston, this is the WLEI podcast, where we share stories of people making the world better through lean thinking and practice. For more information about LEI, including how we can help you apply lean thinking, please visit lean.org.
So today I'm joined by Joe Seestadt, a veteran in lean management and healthcare operations. Joe currently serves at Bronson Healthcare and the Lean Enterprise Institute as a faculty member and coach. Before that, Joe played a foundational role in regards to lean at the Cleveland Clinic. There, he led the development of the organization's first daily management system, which is a topic that we'd like to cover during this conversation. It's a system that has since gone on to become quite widely recognized in the lean healthcare world, which is very cool. And so we're going to today spend some time exploring Joe's deep experience with daily management in particular, but lean in general. And with regard to daily management, one of the areas that I'd like to hear Joe's thoughts on are the sort of the relationship, the connections, the interlocking between daily management and other management practices, such as hoshin kanri. So that's what we're gonna do today, Joe. How's that sound? Sound okay?
Sounds good, Josh. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast. So I guess to get started, I'll invite you to just simply introduce yourself. Give us an overview of your career, your experience with lean, and anything else you'd like to share with our fine listeners for this podcast.
Yeah, thanks. If I had to summarize my career, it's really been a bounce back and forth between being the lean person and being the operations person several times over in my career across different industries. Coming out of college, I was an industrial engineer, did some internships in that field. My first job was an industrial engineer in the auto industry. And a couple of years in, I wanted to be the production supervisor who got a chance to experience the changes that I was putting in place as the IE. And so I've had a chance to do that several times. It was kind of like I'm that internal consultant for an organization, and then I get an appetite to help to operationalize what we're putting in place. And so that path kind of followed me into the aluminum extrusion industry. I was an operations kind of general superintendent there. And then I moved to healthcare. I've really spent the last about 18 years in healthcare now. Cleveland Clinic, I was recruited there as a lean guy in pathology and lab medicine. I was told that path and lab medicine was the most like manufacturing, so you'll love it. And I was that internal lean guy for a while. And then I ended up taking over the operation for all of path and lab medicine, working alongside physicians and high-level lab people in the operations space, researchers, those types of things. Learned a lot there. And my career has really migrated now to being a coach and working part-time and mainly remote for another health system, Bronson Healthcare Group, where I help to lead the sales and outreach arm of path and lab medicine, which are kind of testing that we bring in from outside of Bronson. I also get a chance to be the internal lean guy there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, as we've talked about previously, Joe, we've known each other now for a little while. I just love that a hallmark really in your career has been this opportunity to both sort of consult, advise, teach, coach in a lean role, and then the areas where you've been able to serve in that capacity. You've then taken the leap onto the sort of the ownership side, the leadership side. Thanks for your consultation, Joe. Thanks for the changes that you've brought about. Now own it. Deal with the consequences of the change that you brought, which is not an experience that many in the role of coach or consultant necessarily get to have. But the fact that you have had that, and as you said, many times over, it's been sort of a pattern in your career, I think is great.
If I can just say one quick thing on that. I was so scared the first time I did it. When I moved from being like the IE to being that production supervisor, I was so scared. And then I think I just really fell in love with that concept of being both the kind of guide at the side, if you will, the coach, and then jumping in and owning it. And it really has helped to test some of the concepts. So I've loved that.
Yeah, nice. And the few things that you and I have had a chance to get to do, like we've visited some organizations together. I mean, the fact that that's been such a prominent aspect in your career, to me, really shines through in just the way that you approach coaching and consultation, very sensitive to the realities of what change can do, and the challenges that the leaders then are going to encounter, having to own the change and guide their people through the change, and learn themselves to manage and lead differently. All those kinds of
Thanks.
things. That's great. So to get into our conversation, thanks for that background. And given that our focus today is on daily management, while I want to touch upon the relationship between daily management and hoshin kanri, I'd like to focus on daily management. So I mentioned in your introduction, you mentioned it as well, that you were a part of early work with daily management at the Cleveland Clinic. And so to get started, maybe you could take us back to that time and help us understand what prompted the need for daily management at the Cleveland Clinic. How was it that that work got started?
Sure. Yeah. So we're talking about 2012, 2013. I had been the internal lean person in pathology and lab medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, and I was appointed to be the operational leader, the institute administrator. It was a bigger span of control than I've ever had. 1,600 employees reported up through me, a very large budget and a lot of problems. My predecessor, who had that role, who had been in that role for a couple of decades and was very committed to the work, long hours. I was a married parent of young children and knew that I could not keep up at the same pace of the number of hours, 60, 70 hours a week. So I saw daily management as a key system that I needed to put in place to survive in this role, honestly. And daily management for me was something that would give me several things. One, the visibility of problems coming from outside of the lab industry. I didn't know the processes the same way that people who grew up in the industry did. And I needed to be able to see problems, and I needed my team to as well. Secondly, I need to be able to know whether we were ahead or behind or winning or losing every single day. And then third, I had to have an ability to have issues bubble up, get discussed and resolved, and then communications come back down on an everyday basis. So to solve problems, to get that communication flowing, it was really a means of survival for me at first.
Outstanding. So what were some of the, in those early days, Joe, what were some of the challenges that you encountered in getting daily management up and running? And, I guess it was new to the organization. Perhaps it
Yeah.
was even to some degree new to you. I imagine you had experienced it previously in companies that you'd worked for before. But anyway, yeah, what were some of those early challenges that you encountered?
Yeah, the scale was new for me. The practice of daily management was something that I did as that frontline production supervisor back at Delphi, and also as the general superintendent at Kaiser. The practice wasn't new, but the scale was new. So what we were looking to do, what I was looking to do, was to connect all the way from the front line up to the executive leadership for path and lab medicine every single day to have a system that worked together. So some of the early challenges were, even though I had a large span of control, I didn't control things like at every level. I needed to use influence and not control, especially in a medically doctor-led organization, which I think is exactly the way to go in healthcare. I was working with a lot of MDs who didn't have the background that I did or the desire that I did to put something like this in place, maybe not seeing the reason why. So that was in front of me. If we're a doctor-led organization, I need to figure out how to get the doctors enough exposure that they see the reason, the compelling reason why a daily management system like this would be needed, and they would get behind it too to support it so that the organization would. So really using the powers of influence and not control to put it in place was one challenge at first. Another challenge, the other one that I would say, is that when you start something like this, the best ideas will absolutely be thrown away in the trash if you can't be consistent and have good discipline around what you put in place. So, as an architect of the system, like I was also the one that needed to be the user of the system. And so that puts a lot of pressure on making sure that you are thinking about things appropriately and that you are thinking about how to set the example of being consistent. Meaning, if you've got a daily huddle, you're there every single day. If it's supposed to be 15 minutes, you're not dragging it out to 30, those types of things.
It's really interesting. I mean, we touched upon the fact that you've had this throughout your career, these experiences like on the kind of advising, coaching side, these experiences kind of owning the operation, being the operational leader. But you just kind of added a dimension to that which is, sort of the hat of the architect,
Hmm.
the designer of the system, which is a different hat from the one that you need to put on as the user
Hmm.
of that system. And I think even just that distinction, for us in the work that we get to do of, now I've got the architect hat on,
Hmm.
who's got the user hat, if not me, and how do we formulate kind of a partnership between the people wearing those two hats. In this case, that was the same person. You were collaborating yourself between the architect and the user, but forming good collaboration there, right? Good feedback loops between the users of the systems that maybe others architect, others design, set up, is I think probably pretty important.
Yeah, this was kind of like an experiment. So I had been trained really well at Cleveland Clinic through the continuous improvement group. The structure was a dotted line into that group and a solid line into pathology and lab medicine. I had been trained really well, and I was kind of like the first person who came out of continuous improvement to really own a big part of the operation.
Hmm.
And so to do this well, the things I could control was we're putting the standards in place the way that the daily management system ought to be. And so that was just I kind of treated those early days as an experiment. Like, let's see if a lean person can actually, like outside of healthcare, could run an operation this way.
Mhm, mhm. So a number of years later, I'm going to say 2018.
Hmm.
So you said things got started around 2012, 2013. I think it was in 2018. And if I'm not mistaken, by then you had moved on from the Cleveland Clinic.
Yes.
But LEI founder Jim Womack visited the Cleveland Clinic, spent some time with the top level lean leader there, Dr. Lisa Yerian, to himself study and learn about this daily management system that by then had spread, I think, across maybe the entire organization, or certainly had spread outside of beyond pathology, where you initially set it up. The article that he wrote, which I know you're familiar with, was
Hmm.
titled "The Escalator of Issues," and in that article, he describes what he saw in terms of daily management at the Cleveland Clinic. I'm curious to hear from you. How did it feel to see that article? And if you wouldn't mind being maybe putting a critical hat on. Speaking of putting hats on and taking them off, put a critical hat on. What do you think the article captured well? What perhaps was missing, or maybe you would have described it differently from your prior experience.
Sure. Yeah. So that article came out several years after I had left Cleveland Clinic. I left around 2015. And I was really excited to see a couple of names in there. So Dr. Lisa Yerian, she was my first project sponsor in pathology and lab medicine. She is a pathologist. She and I co-labored together for several years. I took her direction as she was leading up our continuous improvement group within the lab and pathology. Nate Hurl, who's now deceased, he hired me in at Cleveland Clinic. He was the person I dotted line reported to through the continuous improvement group. So to see them as these also architects of a system that went so pervasive, I mean, we're talking scale difference. We're talking, 100x compared to what I was working with in pathology and lab medicine. Now we're taking it to all the institutes, all shifts, different locations, and things like that. I was really excited to see those names, my connection to those names, and that was cool. I think that the core principles were absolutely at play in 2012, 2013, 2014, 15 when I was there running it in path and lab medicine. Things like the escalator of issues, being able to have a tiered structure where things come up every day and go back down every day. That was cool to see that same thing happened on a larger scale. We had 4 tiers at Cleveland Clinic, and then this had taken it further all the way up to the CEO. One critique I would have of the article, I think Jim Womack had written that he had heard from in interviewing, I guess, that some of the improvements before that seemed to be sort of one-off, a little bit haphazard, maybe not connected to systemness. And while I do think that may have been true, there's a lot of kind of point Kaizen and discrete projects
Mhm.
throughout many of the institutes. What I can say is that back in 2012, 13, 14 at Pathology and Lab Medicine, the daily management system truly was a system, and it was part of really a larger management system that did include problem solving. We were moving capability from doing discrete projects to really doing capability building at the frontline levels and throughout to develop mid-level leaders to solve problems. And we are also doing strategy deployment. So, when I first entered pathology and lab medicine, we were measuring how many projects we got, what the return on those were. And as I left that role and moved into the operational leader, we were measuring capability and what does the system look like to do improvement. So I think that comment was not germane to what we were doing in pathology and lab medicine, though it may have had some truth, to the rest of the institutes at that time. So
Sure.
that'd be my one critique.
Yeah. And of course, the Cleveland Clinic's a massive organization.
Sure.
Jim couldn't have seen everything. And things change, of course, right?
Mhm.
This is 6 or so years later.
Right.
Cool. Okay. So let's maybe dive a little bit more deeply into daily management itself. We've been talking about it, referencing it, but maybe we can take a bit of a step back to just how you, Joe, from your experience and your practice, how do you define daily management? And why is it that you think daily management is so important in healthcare operations or really just any complex service environment? You mentioned earlier that your first experience with it was in automotive. A lot of people, I think, first encounter something like daily management in automotive or just manufacturing in general. But here you've been talking about your experience at the Cleveland Clinic in healthcare in a very complex service environment. So anyway, kind of a two-part question there. How would you define daily management? And why would you say it's important to have daily management in healthcare or any complex service environment?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Daily management, I would define as the ability to know every day or more frequently whether you are ahead or behind and having a mechanism to solve problems in that type of daily beat of any type of operation. And so with that comes a lot of elements to make that happen. Perhaps we could speak to that a little bit later. To the second part, though, when we're thinking about a complex organization like healthcare, not the only complex organization out there. I mean, manufacturing is complex too. You're dealing with stakeholders like so healthcare. Let's go there for a minute. One of the complexities of healthcare is that the people who are providing the value adding service, the front line are also in many ways your champions and in many ways your customers. So you've got like doctors who are frontline and they are receiving the output perhaps of data that's on a medical chart to kind of work with the patient as that bridge of what they're going to do for a treatment plan. So they're both the frontline and the customer with a lot of influence, and their time is very valuable. So an organization like healthcare, to rely on the input of those frontline people, the doctors, without having other people come alongside them, you're going to run out of time to even get things done, like problem solve and really get focused on what we should be working on. So therefore, things like daily management really become very important because now we're committing to let's get together for a short period of time every day, looking at the most critical things and helping to triage into problem-solving efforts that could be done by people outside of the MDs. You could have operations folk who are taking direction, coming together and collaborate to work on the actual problem. So I think it's so important in healthcare to do that. I would also kind of put the tagline that I've viewed daily management as a way to be proactive with your reactive issues. And so when I first came into that role as the operational leader at Cleveland Clinic's Path and Lab Medicine, I wanted kind of one time of the day to avoid the need for the urgent email or the knock on the door or the phone call. Of course, if there's something that's happening right there, we'll address that. But if it could wait 24 hours, we could have like a really good triage process, put this into problem solving, track it. I'd rather do that than a lot of disruptions throughout the day.
Nice. So both being proactive and reactive to solving the right problems at the right level, at the right time, by the right people, and a system to kind of help with all of that. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the fact that a system like for daily management has various elements, various routines. What are some of those?
Yeah. And it's been really unique because now as a coach, I'm working with other organizations. So I'm not the architect and the owner anymore. I'm really the influencer and the coach and the come alongside people. So to explain what makes up a good daily management system now is of highest importance. And where I see is that there's several elements to make a daily management system go really well. One is a board, ideally a whiteboard that is dry erase that you have the ability to maybe stick magnets to and things like that. Secondly, a huddle that you have discipline around a daily time that you come together in a space that's kind of sacred that you huddle for with a certain protocol in place, amount of time, people present, things like that. But then other things, the ability to trend your data as you're looking at measures in different categories, perhaps safety, quality, delivery, cost, or others. You've got measures or metrics within them. Having the ability to look back and see how does today's information that we're reporting out compare to this week or this month or prior months. That's important. I also see capability of the person running the huddle to know every moment what type of conversation am I dealing with right now?
Hmm.
Is this a quick conversation where in the next 30 seconds we're going to resolve something? That could be one option. Is this a conversation where ultimately I'm going to put this onto a tracking mechanism for future follow-up, but it's not like deep problem solving. So that's a second thing. Or am I dealing with a problem to solve right now, which is going to generate an A3? So that leader's capability to manage those conversations and know what to do. I call that the art of triaging, to be able to triage a conversation well. I think that that's a key element. A couple other things, problem solving. So flowing out of daily management, the ability to problem solve. Also connecting to strategy. So you can have KPIs from your hoshin come into your measures that you're looking at. And then the last couple of things I would say is an ability to prioritize the problem-solving efforts that you're going to work on. And lastly, to escalate issues in a tiered daily management system and communicate resolutions in that same system. So those are some of the elements that I would say are important to include in a daily management system.
You mentioned the board and the huddle. Any advice for folks in terms of location of that board and where that huddle takes place?
Yeah, close enough. I would say location. It's important to be close enough to where the work is done to the Gemba, um, to where you can be close enough to see if you needed to look over your shoulder or point to something, or go observe something with your eyes right after the huddle is done, and yet not too close that it interferes with the people doing the work. So ideally along the outskirts, along a wall, works out really well where you can form a semicircle in front and not be impeding anybody working, but you're still within close proximity to where the work is done. That would
Nice.
be one advice.
Okay. So sustaining any kind of practice, any kind of system, any kind of process, of course, is challenging. I'm curious what you've learned specifically with regard to daily management and keeping that system, that practice alive and effective over time.
Yeah, that's a really good question, very important question. So, when there are checks and balances within the daily management system, I have found that consistency will prevail. So, one check and balance is if you can set up a tiered daily management system where it's not just a one-off or not just one for the whole plant, where you can have there's different levels that flow up and information that comes back down. That's kind of, there's many benefits of that. One of them, though, is consistency because it keeps everybody honest. If you've got like one area that decides, we're not going to huddle this week, and yet the rest of the system is, that becomes very obvious very, very quickly. So I think that's one thing that will help to keep, that's one effort that will help to keep things very consistent. Also, when you have meaningful measures, when you're looking at information that is meaningful to those who are interacting with it, and it's not only top down. So it's kind of like this hybrid between top down, perhaps strategy deployment, and bottom up. That you've got things that the people who are interacting like with the person leading the huddle, perhaps frontline folks, that it actually matters to them. That helps to keep the huddle meaningful and consistent. And then lastly, I'd say when you have problems getting solved and they're not just hitting some big list and we're looking at the same stuff every day, every week, every month, when you're seeing problems get opened up, worked on using problem-solving methods and solved, and you can see the improvement, that tends to get a lot of buy-in, and people will start to remark, wow, until we had this in place, we weren't seeing problems and solving them like we are now.
Yeah, it strikes me that you're really thinking from the perspectives of like all the stakeholders involved and what value they, as an important stakeholder, are getting out of the system. And if there's like any gaps there
Mhm.
where some set of stakeholders, the value is questionable or the value is just absent, that's probably gonna erode the system over time. But if everyone from leadership to frontline personnel to customers to patients, in the case of healthcare, I mean, if there's clear benefit for all in the system, then kind of why not, keep this thing going? It makes life better.
Exactly. Mhm.
How would you say, so, you've done a little bit of sharing with us here about your experience at the Cleveland Clinic. That was from over a decade ago now.
Mhm.
Um, how would you say your thinking or your capability has evolved from that experience a decade ago to, let's say, your more recent work, whether that's with Bronson Healthcare or perhaps as a faculty with the Lean Enterprise Institute?
Yeah, so I've had the ability to work with Bronson Healthcare Group for about 9 years now, 10 years since leaving Cleveland Clinic. My role is a lot different there than it was at Cleveland Clinic. Less responsibility, part-time, mainly remote.
Mhm.
And so my attachment to the beat of what happens every single day is not like it was when I was running an operation at Kaiser or Delphi or Cleveland Clinic. So what I've learned is a couple of things. One, 10 years later, 12 years later, daily management is more pervasive than it was back in 2012, 2013, especially in healthcare. Most health systems that I talk with are now having something in place for daily management, which is really good. So that's one reflection that it's more pervasive. Another thing, though, is that I think that it highlights the need for really strong discipline around what is the structure of daily management. What I've experienced at Bronson or talking with other healthcare systems over the last several years is when it starts to change, the spirit of daily management changes, and it's more like, hey, let's just go twice a week or once a week, or the meetings become a little bit longer than 15 minutes and we kind of lose the focus of what we're wanting to do, that it breaks down the real purpose of the system. And the last thing I'd say as a reflection is just looking at my own self and my involvement with Bronson. When you're not connected every day to the beat of what is going on in operation, and you can't be at a daily huddle, which I can't these days, it really does it does make it so that you're not able to be really part of the system. So I think just it's emphasized for me the need for consistency. If you're the owner of a huddle and you're running daily management, to do it every single day. I mean, sure, you have vacation every once in a while to have a backup is great, but don't let it stop. Like just keep it going consistently every day. Those are some reflections now, like 10 years later, 12 years later.
Seems like from your experience, the beat of daily is almost the like slowest uh,
Right.
beat that the system can handle. You talked about wanting to be even responding even more frequently than on a daily basis, but that your experience of when the frequency goes slower than
Mhm.
daily, that can make the system kind of harder to maintain, harder to get real value out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you gather for, say, a 15-minute huddle, that's not the only time that you're thinking about or talking about what's going on in the operation. There's pre-work that's been done. So really
Right.
being connected is key. There's after work that happens, so it really is continuous, not just once per day. It's continuous.
Nice. Okay, so you've mentioned strategy deployment or hoshin kanri kind of strategy top down several times. Could you talk a little bit about how you see daily management supporting the connection between daily work with organizational strategy?
Absolutely. So when companies are able to work on hoshin kanri, and out of their strategy comes key performance indicators and problems to solve, daily management becomes a mechanism to help to bring that to fruition. It's not the only mechanism, but Hoshin combined with problem solving acumen and methodology, along with daily management, when those three things can come together, really good things happen. So, one very practical way to connect Hoshin to daily management is that key performance indicators, if they can be tracked and trended on your board every day and discussed, and then we are moving toward the target level and problems are being opened up to solve as we are looking to close that gap. Daily management can be the mechanism to help, or a mechanism to help that to occur. So the way that may work is you're looking at a certain KPI. Let's say it's for a quality indicator coming off of Hoshin. It's a created problem. It's not something that we're trying to bring back to the level we once were. We're trying to take to a new level. So we're watching the trending over the last couple of weeks, and we are picking up a little bit, but not at the rate that we should. In daily management, you could ask the question, well, what can be done to look at this and solve and do some problem solving effort? And you could track that right there on your daily management board, assign an owner to that, perhaps open up an A3 and then come back and look at that in a couple of weeks or whatever the amount of time to take initial steps may be. And the daily management allows the vehicle to have regular check-ins on that.
Nice. What would you say are like some telltale signs, Joe, that a daily management practice, daily management system is disconnected from the
Yeah.
organization's strategy? How might you pick up on that?
Yeah, so several ways. One, if there are disparate categories being tracked across boards, especially within one span of control. So, like in a tiered daily management system, let's say that I'm in an area and they have like an executive level, mid-level, frontline. If I'm looking at their boards, just like literally going up there, and I see all different categories and for sure different measures being looked at, that would be evidence of disconnection. That why is the executive group looking at something so stringently on cost, but at the front line, they're looking at things from like quality and safety, but they have nothing to do with cost. That would show disconnection to me. So the vice versa of that is that you've got strong correlation between the categories if you're in a tiered system. Another would be I'd be looking for escalation working well. It's kind of like gears, and when they're working well, you're gonna see perhaps one out of every 10 issues that get brought up not be able to be solved at the level that it's brought up, and it needs to go up. And
Mhm.
so I would want to observe, is that going up in the right way? Is the person who led the huddle beneath carrying it up as a participant in the next huddle? Are they representing it appropriate? Is it appropriately? Is it getting tracked on the board of their leader's huddle? Is there good triage and problem solving that's initiated there?
Yeah, you've mentioned both top down and bottom up, and it's exactly what you just described there, right? Like ways to detect the sort of top down connection
Hmm.
between daily management at the front lines with organizational strategy, and ways to detect kind of bottom up connection or disconnection. I can even think about Hoshin Conry as a place where some of those issues that might be repeatedly getting escalated up end up forming into a strategic initiative, right? A strategic area of focus, because it's like, seems like our operational management, our daily management isn't quite capable of resolving that issue once and for all. And so let's elevate it to Hoshin Conry and kind of tackle it with that approach. So a few more questions here to kind of wrap things up. From your experience, what advice would you give to a healthcare leader or really any business leader who's just getting started with daily management?
Couple of things. One, clear definition of who is the owner. Perhaps we're just starting in one spot. Who is the person who's going to facilitate or run or own that huddle? It's not like a command and control ownership. It is, though, clear responsibilities of who's the owner and then who are the participants, what are their roles in the huddle. I've observed huddles where it's like there's no true owner. It's kind of like a report out. This person speaks, then this person, this person. And I don't think that works very well because you really want to have somebody who's helping to triage conversations and opening up problem solving efforts. So that'd be one thing. Another is to learn first. So to either perhaps take a course or to go and observe a place that has daily management system in place already and learn from them before you just start. Because once you start, you really don't want to stop. So it's important to really do that learning first. And then I think the last thing is we were encouraged when we did some observations within Path and Lab Medicine at Cleveland Clinic. We observed another health system, and what they shared with us kind of really resonated with me all the way through today. And they said, hey, don't get hung up if you can't measure things right now. Obviously, you do want to be able to measure things. You want to look at the right things to measure. Just start asking the question, did anything weird happen yesterday? And you will be surprised what will be shared. And if you keep huddling every day, within like a week's time, those conversations will turn into appropriate measures that are coming from the bottom up. And then you'll start to connect them through hoshin from the top down. But really just lower the barrier to entry. Don't feel like you have to have everything perfect. Start asking, did anything weird happen yesterday, and track that, and you'll see what is actually happening.
I can see how that would have stuck with you. I think for sure that's going to stick with me. We'll probably stick with our listeners too. All right. Next question. Are there some specific practices or maybe some mentors or experiences that have had an especially large influence on you over the years?
Yeah, I kind of segment into, I've been in industry for 25 years or so, segment it really into early in my career, mid, and more recent. Early in my career, when I moved from being that industrial engineer to that production supervisor, and my responsibility was to lead a huddle in my area of influence every single day. I think it was like 3 o'clock. It was at the end of the shift. I was first
Mhm.
shift, and
Mhm.
I had a leader above me attending and other people that was really influential for me. Even things like it was a UAW environment, and so I'd have people that were above me there, but I'd also have my team there, and they couldn't hear me. And my boss said, "Why don't you bring out like a speaker and like speak into the speaker?" And I remember, like I'm like a 24-year-old kid out there with people triple my age, and I'm out there in a speaker, and they started laughing, laughing, laughing the first week. And
Oh,
then that became
goodness.
normal, so like it normalized and it was good. It was helpful for everybody. So just getting that experience early in my career is helpful. Kind of midway through my career, Cleveland Clinic, we went and saw Akron Children's Hospital, and they had this tiered daily management system, much like Cleveland Clinic put in place in 2018. It went all the way up to the CEO every single day. That was really cool to see. Also touring Theta Care back in the day there and seeing the work of Dr. Toussaint with daily management. That was really neat to see. And then more recently, as I'm a coach with LEI in developing the daily management course, that has been really influential for me because now I'm having to take these kind of intuition things that I've done through an operator and bring them now into a lean coach. It's made me think really hard about how to teach somebody to do this. And I've been able to put that in practice with companies like Turner Construction, seeing them implementing a robust daily management system throughout their construction sites in a whole different industry. So I'm kind of like going to school all over again now as I'm trying to teach others to do this.
I think many people can relate to that experience of, being a practitioner,
Mhm.
learning a lot, building some confidence in what you know, and then being put in a position to teach. And that
Right.
is another experience entirely. That's great. Thanks for sharing some of those things, Joe.
Sure.
So final question. What's energizing you these days? What's some new work or some challenges that you're excited to be taking on?
Yeah, when I started working with LEI now about a year and a half ago, I didn't expect that I'd be able to have so much influence in the daily management space. So that's really exciting for me as I'm building this course. We're going to be doing a virtual course here in a couple of weeks, beginning at the end of April. And also seeing how daily management is really tied into hoshin kanri and problem solving. I love that management system approach. So my involvement of that is really exciting for me. And then also being able to partner with some of our partner organizations who are implementing daily management and problem solving, and I'm able to be a coach with them. Those are things that are really exciting for me these days.
Well, the feeling's been mutual for us, Joe. It's been exciting to get to work with you, to get to know you, to get to experiment and co-learn with you. In this
Thanks,
data
Josh.
management space and elsewhere, it's been great.
Appreciate it.